Hello, my name's Billy McDaniel of Almighty Games. Welcome to my first official devlog for Tabletop Adventures. Tabletop Adventures is coming soon to Steam, but for now, you can wishlist the game by visiting the store page, which you can find in the link in the descriptions below. Since this is the first episode, I'm going to spend a little time showing you the progress I've made on the game so far. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to tell you a little story about how I came up with the idea to make this game. So, first of all, I'm a Dungeons & Dragons fanatic. Yeah, you heard that right. I've lived my entire life fantasizing about things like wizards and magic and castles, knights, mythological beasts. When I discovered D&D, it opened up a whole new world to me. I spent countless hours reading, learning about the game, creating game accessories, props, or even writing out detailed tables of information that I could use during my next gaming session. So organizing a group of players was always the most difficult part of the game for me. Because of this, I spent so much time conjuring up ideas on how I could play the game solo, as if that was even possible. I was never really interested in playing any of the video games that I saw on my computer, like on Steam or, on the Xbox or whatever, because they always seemed to focus on the graphics or the animations or basically the visual immersion. And I felt like the developers of those games didn't really understand what made D&D fun. So, in my opinion, players want to roll dice. They want to move figurines around. They want to make decisions that are not always strictly combat-oriented. So, hearing the dungeon master telling a story and changing his voice to imitate, say, the butcher or the blacksmith or even the serving wench or any variety of monsters or a dragon or anything like that was always a big part of the entertainment. And this is something that often gets overlooked when you're playing a video game. Now, there have been a few games that have included these sort of voiceovers, but it's never really done to the satisfaction that I was hoping for. So that's where my idea began. So we don't need these fancy animations. We don't need these bedazzling effects. All we really need is to sort of bring back the tabletop experience. So I started off with a random dungeon generator, and then I added some heroes and enemy figurines. Made sure that I can move these around on the board. Now, the player controls up to 4 heroes in my game, and while they're exploring the dungeon, they do this together on a single base. When they actually encounter something, the figurines split up into individual bases, and then it goes into like a turn-based strategy game. At that point, an initiative is rolled and combat begins, just like you would experience in any role-playing game sitting at a table with friends. Like I said, combat is generally turn-based, and the heroes and enemies have character sheets, and you roll dice, and the dice are always used to determine the outcome of every situation, just like pen and paper D&D. At the moment, I've only really developed a melee and the ranged physical attacks, but I will be adding a wide variety of options to give players more freedom, just as they would expect in a regular game. For example, making a diplomacy check or bluff, intimidation, distraction. These might all be acceptable alternatives to combat. I mean, it's not very realistic going into every situation with an axe. Sometimes you might actually want to talk your way out of it, or you might even find yourself at an advantage leaving one guy alive and asking questions and stuff like that. And let's not forget using brute force sometimes to knock through a door, for example. Sure beats backtracking and searching for a key, right? You can just bang through the door. Rogues love to do things like search and spot, listen, detect traps, disarm. These kind of features often get left out of video games that are considered role-playing games. I mean, they take out the role-playing, which is kind of funny. And these are just a few of the things that a character should be allowed to do, but often are not. Now, I realize that it's impossible to recreate the true essence of an actual tabletop game, but my goal is to give Tabletop Adventures the same look and feel, at least, and also accompany the player with the dungeon master's voice narration. Acting out those characters in the game really brings life and energy to the game. It's all about storytelling. It's all about rolling dice, looking at your character sheets, making decisions and building strategy and stuff like that. When you're looking at the game, I want you to feel like you're playing with 3D printed tiles and paper props and dice, and I'm really not that interested in making things look photorealistic or anything like that. Now, I'm not trying to replace D&D either. I don't think it's even possible to replace D&D. It's a perfect game. Instead, what I'm trying to do is deliver something that can scratch that sort of D&D itch that you get between game sessions. For anyone like me who can't get enough, this is meant to be a secondary alternative while you're waiting for that next awesome gathering with your friends. So with that said, yeah, the game is single player only, and that is by design. I've had a few people recommend that I make this game multiplayer, and I feel that they're sort of missing the point. If you had friends available to play together online, then why wouldn't you just play the real game, right? It doesn't make sense to make this a multiplayer game, at least not from my perspective. That doesn't mean that it'll always be single player, but I'm definitely not going to launch this game as a multiplayer game. Another topic that comes up from time to time is that Tabletop Adventures could be a really cool role-playing aid for online D&D players. While that may be true, it still doesn't allow me to play this game solo, which is really what my objective is. I want to be able to play D&D and play by myself rather than relying on other people to be able to play a game. So I may explore some of these possibilities later on. Maybe, like I said, after the game officially launches, if the game is received well and I'm getting a lot of recommendations for it, I might actually branch off in those directions. But for now, my mind is really set on making this just a cool single-player experience. Mainly because I want to play this game. I have this sneaking suspicion that other people are going to want to play it too.